And I don't want to talk about this, but I'm Al Franken, and if I did anything bad in the past, well, I'd feel terrible about that. I have no recollection of doing such a thing, and I'm sure that the women are telling the truth about the thing that probably didn't happen, and I certainly would feel awful about it. It would be a shameful thing. I'm embarrassed about this thing that I probably didn't do, but I won't be stepping down. I'm getting back to the important work that the American people sent me here to do.
Take your hand off my ass.
See, that's why they have to keep us in these three separate boxes, just so we don't harm each other. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this is your Backstage meeting, your pre-production episode of Right Angle on BillWhittle.com, made possible by you, the very member of BillWhittle.com, who is coughing up $10 a month and making this possible. There are so many of these horrible stories that I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, I don't plan to do another one until, like, what would be the threshold? How bad does it have to get before we say, okay, yeah, let's do another episode on that?
Well, I'm not actually doing that story this week. I'm so excited.
Yeah, that's a sick thing. When you start looking at stuff like that in the news, you immediately begin hunting for anything else. Have there been any minor changes in the tax code that we could talk about? So anyway, this week, William Whittle, the senior here, has decided that he will have the members-only episode, and so we'll defer to him and let him go first, and hope beyond hope that we don't have to deal with any of this kind of nonsense.
First among equals. I am going to do, since I've got two episodes, I'm going to do a two-parter, and I'm going to basically teach our audience how to skate.
How to skate?
How to skate?
How to skate.
Figure skate, roller
No, how to
skate.
skate. Because I got nothing, and I got nothing twice.
Well, it's been a slow news week.
I got nothing twice. I looked and looked and looked, and I could, for the life of me, not think of anything. And since you guys usually bring two or three,
here we go, Bill. This is the breakup. Here you have an opportunity to, let's see. I'm going down my whole list of things. CNN fires back at Trump. It's your job to represent the U.S. to the world. Do you remember that lovely tweet sequence where Trump was criticizing CNN International because they represent the United States to the world, and CNN says, no, that's not our job, that's yours. FBI gave a heads up to a fraction of the Russian hackers' U.S. targets. Did you hear about that?
Comey provided cover for the Hillary Clinton email thing, according to a Intel whistleblower. That's a good one. Oh, James O'Keefe stepped on his own. You know what? This week.
Yeah.
That was painful.
And apparently O'Keefe made it sound like it's part of the business of being, living in his spy versus spy world. That he is. That apparently he describes it as one of his undercover agents being outed or having her cover blown because O'Keefe sent this woman in to be interviewed by the Washington Post, claiming that years ago she had been impregnated by Roy Moore, the Senate candidate, and that he had wanted her to have an abortion. Completely made up story. That would be a fascinating topic, Bill. Frankly, it's like how far can you go in this kind of journalism?
I will absolutely take it. I know James I don't know him super well. I don't think anybody knows him real well. But definitely, that's a great one.
I'm pretty sure, Bill, that any interaction that you've had with James O'Keefe was really just a setup, and he had a camera in a bag on you the whole time.
Well, then I'm in some trouble. Okay, no, I love it. Great.
Everything with I'm too drunk to remember, and
I'm going to have to accidentally erase this Backstage show because if I don't, the members are going to find out how much I depend on you guys, and I know which way the checks will be flowing at that point.
That's right.
All right, no, that's great. So for membership, wowie.
Your what do you call it episode? What do you call that show that I love and watch on a regular basis? Firewall. The one you just did today, which I love so much, I posted to Facebook, and now I can't recall.
Was that the Socialism is for Suckers one?
Oh my goodness.
Venezuela, yeah.
Venezuela, yeah.
Socialism is for Suckers is a little series, though.
Oh my goodness, that was it was horrible. I mean, watching those pictures was horrible, and you just...
Yes, well, it's about time people had to watch the pictures. So I'll tell you what, why don't we, maybe we could...
Go around the horn while you come up with something?
No. I think I've come up with something.
Okay.
After long and deep cogitation, because God knows that we take our members very seriously around here, I've been giving it a great deal of thought, and I would like to talk a little bit about the power of imagery in telling a story as opposed to simply saying something or reading something. It's something I've wanted to do for the longest time.
Like iconography,
and I was just waiting
basically.
Yes, exactly. So I was just waiting for the perfect moment to unveil this gem.
You know, I think if you did that and did the iconography topic, but instead of you saying the things, you actually had Mr. Smart Moninoff say these things about iconography.
In the form of song.
Oh, okay.
Hey, let me and you just reminded me of something when I said Smart Moninoff. Yesterday, I'm at the store. Those of you know I work selling living room furniture at Nebraska Furniture Mart in Texas. And shameless plug, free, no money for that. But anyway, one of our members, a guy named Robert, came into the store, called in advance, and came into the store just because he wanted to meet one of us. And unfortunately, you two live in other states. And it was the nicest thing. I mean, he just was effusive with his praise of the show and talked about how much we've meant to him. He's been watching us for 6 years.
Oh, thank you.
And he said, it wasn't until he got face to face with me that he suddenly realized that I didn't know him.
That's actually a huge compliment.
That's
a huge,
cool.
huge compliment.
It is.
But I felt like I did. I felt like
I know that's a great point. I felt like I did too. Every time I meet somebody, I feel like I know them, especially Stratosphere Lounge regulars who been through 170 episodes of that Snorefest.
Is it really only 170?
It feels like
seemed like more.
1,700.
But he brought me a book.
Maybe that's a better.
The guy brought me a book, and he knew, like he had worked in retail before. He said, "Now I'm not going to hand you this book because I know that you probably cannot accept gifts from customers, and security cameras are everywhere." And I said, "Yeah, that's correct. We can't do that." And he said, "But I know a guy who I'm good friends with in another department here, so I'm going to give it to my friend." and then later on, I got to meet his friend who stopped by and just happened to have a book that he wanted to share with me. So,
that's nice of him.
But anyway, it was another one of those sort of charming moments where, while he is being, just very encouraging about the things he said about what we've been doing for the last 6 years, all I could think of was how grateful I am that there are people like him out there,
That's definitely the topic. That's a great
Love
topic.
it.
I've had that experience many, many times, and so is Steve. Only he doesn't remember them.
People they don't bring me books; they buy me cocktails.
Well,
all right, I'm good.
The good thing is,
guys.
Steve actually has one guy who tells him that story every night, and it's like a brand new thing for Steve.
It's really lovely.
That's right. Okay. So Bill has his topics. Did you write those down somewhere? Did somebody write those down? Okay.
I'll wing it.
Stephen Green, what's up with you, my friend?
Well, if you'd rather go first, I promise you, you're not going to steal my topic.
Okay, I'll be glad to do that. Oops, I was jumping around in the topic menu here, and I left my own. So it's funny. Every once in a while, did you ever go to a newspaper in the olden days when they used to print them on paper, and open the newspaper first to the corrections? And then they later began calling them corrections and amplifications because they didn't want to just be humble and admit their mistakes. So anyway, I do that a lot. I used to do that a lot. And today I found this story in the New York Times. And it was the New York Times not exactly correcting the record, but dealing with a bunch of readers who had apparently been upset that the New York Times wrote a profile of an American self-proclaimed Nazi. He's a white nationalist and not a white supremacist, he believes. He doesn't care what other people do. If you want to have interracial marriages, that's fine. He just believes in white nationalism. So anyway, they wrote this profile and they, followed this guy around with his girlfriend and soon-to-be wife and went to the supermarket and blah, blah, blah. The readers of the New York Times, or at least many of them, were outraged that the Times was normalizing Nazism. And
They weren't normalizing Nazism. They were normalizing Americanism, which is what this guy was. Just a great topic, man.
Well, and be careful because I'm not really going to deal with this. Yeah, I'm not going to really deal with the profile that the Times wrote about the guy, which I only skimmed because that wasn't the interesting part to me.
I completely agree.
Yeah, and it's possible that this guy is the most despicable human being on the continent, for all I know. Okay, that's not the point. What I found was fascinating is that the New York Times readers were saying, and the New York Times felt it had to defend itself against the accusation that somebody with aberrant political views should not have a profile written about him as if he were a human.
He didn't have aberrant political views for the culture that he grew up in. For the culture that he grew up in, he had perfectly normative political views. Now, if this guy, I probably should just save this for the show, but I have a pretty strong feeling that given the publicity and the fact that he was willing to do an interview, this guy was not an SS camp guard or anything like that.
No, he's like in his 30s. He's in 20s or 30s.
When he was, he's an older man now, obviously.
No, he's not an actual National Socialist Party member. He's an American.
I'm sorry.
He's an American who identifies with white nationalism and Nazism.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
It's so, well, you know what? That's interesting too, right?
Yeah.
The fact that I just couldn't even process the fact that this could be an American Nazi. It's just some Nazi. Okay, well, it's probably an old man, and what did he do when he was young? That's going to be my general approach to it, I think.
Okay.
And then I'm going to let people know what I think about Nazis, and the same as I've always thought.
Well, to me, it was fascinating that the Times felt it had to defend itself, and I've got my own particular take on this, but there are two elements of it. One is just the fact that this is verboten, to use the German term. This is verboten. You can't write about a person who has despicable political views or racial views or whatever and portray him as anything other than an unmitigated monster.
This is a great topic because that also goes to the nature of evil.
Yeah,
and this idea that this whole evil in the world, and specifically Nazis or Hitler or whatever, that there's something like otherworldly or supernatural about it, and therefore we can't even say its name. That is a disservice to the people who are victims of this thing. If we don't understand that regular people and by many other standards good people are drawn into horrible evil, then we will never be able to deal with the reality of it and the ability to face it. It's a great topic.
There's nothing otherworldly about it. And it doesn't just do a disservice to their victims, but also to the millions of people who stood up to fight it.
Who was it? Somebody said, talking about the Eichmann trial, they talked about the banality of evil, wasn't it?
Yes,
the Eichmann
that
trial?
was the phrase. I can't remember the journalist who coined it, but it's a great phrase.
Yeah. I'm reading, as you know, Churchill's biography, and the biographer draws upon diaries of people like Goebbels and Goering and Rommel and other field marshals and generals, and it is banality is the term. I mean, you just if you're reading this, you just think like, well, gee, any American general could have written that diary entry that's just talking about how to fight a war and what a disappointment that the enemy did this and how he wished they would have done that, and
There was I think it was an HBO movie with Kenneth Branagh, came out, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, maybe longer, but it was about the Wannsee Conference outside of Berlin, where a bunch of German staffers, military and bureaucrats plotted the final solution to the Jewish question, as they called the Holocaust. And it was basically a bunch of middle-aged guys talking in a very blasé way about the destruction of an entire race of people.
Yeah, it was like corn distribution or some other logistical problem had to be solved.
They're talking about training schedules and
the only dramatic moment was when one of the Nazis went off on one of his colleagues for a violation of Robert's rules.
It's pretty much like that, to be honest.
And critics panned the movie because they said it was so boring and dry, which was kind of the point.
Well, and there's one little twist that I won't reveal now. A very telling sentence, I thought, that the New York Times editors included in their little sort of mea culpa, not mea culpa piece about this. So anyway, that's my topic for this week. That'll
Great topic.
Go out to the masses, to the mob. And then Stephen Green, I believe you're the only one left out of the three of us who has not yet.
It has come down to me. And pardon me if I'm rambling a little today. I got maybe 3 hours of sleep last night. I was today, so just bear with me. But my wife sent me a really interesting article. I think she found it in the Daily Beast about a set of studies now. There's been more than one on using LSD and psychedelic mushrooms to treat depression in terminally ill patients. Not to keep them loaded up on opiates the whole time, which is what we currently do, but to have one or two sort of guided trips with doctors and psychologists or psychiatrists or psychologists, I can't remember which, present, and people finding peace with their illness, and the effects last for months. Again, not keeping them on a trip the entire time, but just one or two experiences and having sustained improvement in depression and anxiety that comes with being terminally ill. And I think this has all sorts of interesting ramifications, not just legal, but also spiritual. Is this kind of worshiping a false god? Is it doing what we can to alleviate depression? I think it's a fascinating topic.
I completely agree.
I think they're going to advertise this to the elderly. This once it's approved for over-the-counter use, as basically, hey, you're going to be up anyway. You might as well be on LSD.
That's right.
It's like. So, the thought I immediately had was my friends in college who were engaging in such behavior used to say that, that basically people would keep doing LSD until they had what they described as the death trip. And, just really dramatic, satanic, awful lake of fire kind of hallucination. And that's what I immediately thought of. Like, you're on death's doorstep, and do you really want to be gulping down some peyote?
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, I think so too. For three guys with 4 blank holes, it's not a bad roster.
Hey, yeah.
I don't know what 4 blank holes means, but
I didn't have any shows. I didn't have any shows.
Oh, I see.
I got the feeling you guys didn't have any shows either.
No, I came prepared for once, so
yeah.
put a little
just
star
you,
by my name this week.
It's
all right. I'll just stop the projector now. Then why don't I? I'm glad I was in the audiovisual department.
I want my little gold star next to my name. That's all.
You get one.
Well, I want to say a special thank you to the people last week who remarked on the fact that they like when we kind of ramble about our personal lives and don't necessarily get right down to business. Because in light of that comment from last week, we've just decided to do like a whole backstage episode where we just ramble about our personal lives. So if you like last week's, I'll bet you're going to love the one we just did here. Yeah. So
that might be an interesting public show.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, it's funny because it gets back to my friend Robert, our friend Robert, who came in to see me, which is, he's like, I feel like I know you. And
it might be an interesting public week, actually, where each one of us brings, kind of our story to things. Maybe bring some pictures, even a couple of childhood photos. I am as amazed as anybody, more amazed than you guys, certainly, that people have the slightest interest in this. I don't believe I will ever get used to that, and I don't mean that in a negative way or in fact, quite the opposite. It just amazes and flatters me and honors me every single time. But every single time, I'm just it takes the wind out of me. It's just so.
And I think you
so
can
flattering.
Tell by the tone in Bill's voice and the look in his eye that is genuine false humility. That is not that phony false humility that some people put on as an act.
Curse you, Scott, and your deep perception of human nature.
So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much.
By the way,
go ahead.
The more perceptive members
we have a hard out, Bill. We have a hard out.
No, we don't. The more perceptive members of our audience understand that you asked me that question in order to prove that it is in fact genuine humility. and that I had set you up to ask me the question in order to prove, and that you were waiting for me to set you up to ask the question about. See, it's all chess, man. It's chess moves.
Plans within plans.
We're 30
level.
moves into the future.
3D chess. Bill Whittle is playing here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much once again for being part of this adventure, for stopping us in public places and putting a bit of the fear of God into us that suddenly some stalker has discovered us outside of the fortress. But no, seriously, we're glad to know you. And we are thrilled that you feel that you know us, and we could not do this at all if it weren't for your membership dollars and your ongoing support. And for many of you, and I know this frankly because people have told me, your prayers. I mean, there are people out there praying for us, and we are grateful for that. So for Bill Whittle and Stephen Green and the entire Right Angle team at BillWhittle.com, I'm Scott Otts. See you this week on Right Angle.